Hi, this is Dan from Bible Prophecy and Truth, and this is part 2 of Who is the Great Whore, the False Prophet, and the Antichrist. And we're going to be specifically talking about who is the Antichrist in this video. So who is the Antichrist? The Bible tells us we'll be able to know who the Antichrist is. We'll be able to identify him when certain events happen. And it says in 2 Thessalonians that day will not come. It's talking about the day of the Lord, the day that Christ returns, will not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. That the Antichrist himself is going to, it says that he's going to sit in the temple of God, claiming himself to be God. That's going to be the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet that Jesus referenced in his end time discourse in Matthew 24 and Mark 13 and Luke 20 and 17. But he mentioned that Daniel, when you see this abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, then if you're in the area of Judea, just run, don't even get a change of clothing. And that area of Judea that Jesus was talking about is actually the West Bank today. It's that area. And if you know anything about what's going on in the Middle East and with Palestine and Israel, and the hotbed is the West Bank. That's the really highly contested area, and that's Jesus warned, when we see the Antichrist sit in the temple of God, claim to be God, if you're there and you're a Jew, you got to just run, because they're going to be hunting you down. Now, here's some things that we know for sure about the Antichrist: that he's definitely a man. And we're going to go through each one of these separately. He's a man. He will confirm the covenant with many for 7 years. He's going to arise among a union of 10 kings. His kingdom will be the revived Holy Roman / Ottoman empires, as we study in the Prophecy in the Present Time video. There's Prophecy in the Present Day is an article I have on my website right now, and I'm working on the next video I'm going to produce is the one Prophecy in the Present Times that talks about that Holy Roman / Ottoman Empire is the iron mingled with clay, that 5th section of the statue in Daniel 2. And he will also use peace as a weapon. He will claim to be God and will be the abomination that makes it desolate. He will be regarded as brilliant. He will persecute God's people, and he'll rule the entire world. And the number of his name will be 666. So who is the Antichrist? He's definitely a man. There's some people that say the Antichrist will be a system, or that he's actually Satan himself. But we see in Daniel 11 that he won't regard the God of his fathers or the desire of many, regard any God. He'll magnify himself above all. But he'll honor the God of forces, military power, and a God whom his fathers knew not. His fathers. He is definitely a man. In Revelation 19 and 20, it talks about the beast was taken, that's the Antichrist, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast and them that worshipped his image. These both were cast alive into a lake of fire burning with brimstone. And this is the Antichrist and the false prophet are cast into the lake of fire. And in Revelation 20, there's an angel that comes down from heaven having the key to the bottomless pit and a great chain, and he binds Satan, was the old dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil, and Satan had bound him 1,000 years and shut him up and sealed him up in the bottomless pit. So there's two separate entities here. We're talking about the beast and the false prophet. So there's two men that are cast alive into the lake of fire, and then Satan is a separate entity. So he's definitely a man. He's definitely not Satan. And then, as we see in Revelation 19:20, Satan is bound and thrown in the bottomless pit, and it's not Satan, but the Antichrist is a man along with the false prophet, and he's actually thrown bodily. His body will be destroyed, and we'll see that. And I believe that Satan might actually possess the Antichrist when all this happens, because in Revelation 12 we're shown that Satan is cast to the earth having great wrath, knowing that his time is short, and it's going to be for 3.5 years. The last half of the final 7 years is going to be the time where Satan is cast to the earth and will no longer have access to heaven, to God, and he's going to have great wrath, and that's actually going to be the time of the Great Tribulation. And I believe that he might actually possess the Antichrist. He's certainly going to give his power to the Antichrist and the false prophet to do the things they do, and he might actually possess the Antichrist. There's some verbiage in Revelation that really makes me believe that that's the case. And in Daniel 7 we see that this fourth beast, which is the Antichrist and his kingdom, it says his body is destroyed and given to the burning flame. That proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that the Antichrist is a man. He's definitely not a system or Satan or anything else. He is a man that is going to do these things. And he will also confirm the covenant with many for 7 years. In Daniel 9:27, Daniel's given a prophecy of 70 weeks. And 69 of those weeks are from the time that the command was given to rebuild the wall in Jerusalem to the time of Jesus Christ was the first 69 weeks, which are weeks of years. And that's a total of 483 years. That last 7 years in Daniel 9:27 or Daniel 9, it's actually broken up and shown that there's a separate week. That's this final 1 week, and that's what Daniel 9:27 is talking about, is this last week that's actually separated from the first 69. And we know that, looking back on history now, that there's actually a 2,000-year gap between the 69th week and that 70th week, and that's the week we're waiting for. And it says that he will confirm the covenant. He's talking about the Antichrist, and in the midst of the week he will cause the sacrifice and oblations to cease, and for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate. This is the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet in Daniel 9 and 11. And so the Antichrist is going to be one with many. He's going to be with many people that confirm the covenant. And so we're not really going to be able to know who he is at that time. We'll just know that he's one of those many people that are creating that agreement, that international agreement to confirm the status of Jerusalem and the permanent borders of Israel and give Israel the right to exist, right, which is what's being fought over right now. So he's going to be one of many, but then in the midst of the week, 3.5 years in, he's going to cause the sacrifices being performed in the rebuilt temple to cease, and he's going to sit in the temple of God claiming to be God, as Paul tells us. So this is what this man is going to do. So when he sits in the temple of God claiming to be God, that's when Paul tells us that's when he'll be revealed. That's when we'll know for sure. We won't know for sure at the signing, the confirmation, the signing of this peace treaty, but we will know halfway through the 7 years. He will be revealed. We'll know who he is then. And he will also arise among a union of 10 kings. In both Daniel 7 and Revelation 17, we know in Revelation 17 that those 10 horns are 10 kings which received no kingdom as yet, but received power as kings for 1 hour with the beast. They have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These are those 10 Islamic nations that are going to give their power to their Mahdi. And that fourth beast with the 10 horns from Daniel 7 are going to, that fourth beast, those 10 kings, that kingdom that the Islamic Arab kingdom that he sets up, is going to align itself with the lion and the bear and the leopard. And as I talk about in my Modern Nations in the Bible article, it really appears that the lion is Britain, that the bear is Russia, and that the four-headed leopard is Germany in its Fourth Reich today. And so he's going to align himself with a couple of European nations and Russia and these 10 kings of Islamic nations that align with him, and that's going to be his political and military power base to take over the world. And he's going to be the kingdom of the revived Holy Roman Ottoman Empire, as I mentioned in the, understanding or prophecy in the present times and prophecy in the last days, what it's going to be. And we know it's going to be the Holy Roman Ottoman empires. Basically, he's going to align the Arab League with the revived Holy Roman Empire, which is the EU today, and bond them together to be his power base through Britain and Germany and Russia and the 10 kings of the Islamic kingdoms. And that's going to be his political and military power base. And he's probably going to even be crowned king of the Holy Roman Empire by the Pope when they do this, when they align themselves together and take over the world. And he will be what the Muslims call their Mahdi. And it also tells us that the Antichrist will use peace as a weapon. In Daniel 8 it says, through his policy he shall also cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. And he'll also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand. He's going to actually, try to stand up against Jesus at the end. And when we go through prophecy in the present times, or if you look at my existing Islam in the Bible video, you'll see that this is prophecy that the Muslims have that mirror the Bible exactly, and except that the bad guys of the Bible are the good guys of Islam, and the Muslim Mahdi is going to be the Antichrist and actually think to fight Jesus when he returns. But we know that you can't beat God, so it's going to be a definite lose situation for him. And he will most likely rise from the horror of World War III, which appears to be what's going to be the sixth trumpet. The sixth trumpet, there's going to be 2 billion people that die, and so the world is going to be clamoring for peace. And so he's going to come in the name of peace and use that as a weapon to take over the world. And he will also claim to be God. Will claim to be God himself and sit in the temple of God, claiming to be God. He said in Matthew 24, Jesus said when he brought this up, he said, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoso readeth let him understand, then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. That's what I was talking about earlier. And it's, this is the Antichrist is going to sit in the temple of God claiming to be God. And it's the event that Jesus is referring to there, and in Daniel 9:27 and Daniel 11:31. It's the abomination of desolation. And the Antichrist will confirm that covenant, for he'll be one of many that signs the treaty. And then in Daniel 9:27, as we read this before, he's going to confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease. And then Daniel 11 says, an arm shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily sacrifice, and they shall place the abomination that maketh desolate. And Paul talks about this in 2 Thessalonians, where it says, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God. He's talking about the Antichrist here. It says, or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. This is the abomination of desolation. This is when the Antichrist is going to sit in the temple of God claiming to be God. So 3.5 years after the confirmation of the covenant, where the world as a whole comes together to sign that peace treaty for the status of Jerusalem and the borders of Israel, that 3.5 years in, he's actually going to claim to be God himself. And then most people believe that he's going to claim to be all gods and all messiahs, which is the interfaith movement that's going on in the world today that the Catholic Church is so predominantly promoting, is that all religions worship the same God. So he's just going to claim to be the God of all religions. And when we see that, that's when we're going to know exactly who he is. And he's going to be regarded as brilliant. In Revelation 7, Daniel 7:8 and Revelation 13:5 say that he will have a mouth speaking great things. And Daniel 8:23 describes him as understanding dark sentences. He's gonna fool the world with his speech, and people are just going to think that he is brilliant. And he's going to persecute God's people and rule the entire world. And it says in Revelation 13, it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and power was given him over all kindreds of tongues and nations. He's going to rule the world through his 10 nations of Islamic nations and his alignment with Europe and Russia. He's going to rule the world. And Daniel 7 again, it says, I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. He's going to be fighting all Jews and Christians, which is what Muslims hate, Jews and Christians. And as you'll see in my Islam in the Bible or in my Prophecy in Present Times video, that Muslims, their prophecy says that they're going to be hunting down Jews and Christians to kill us. And we also see that the number of his name will be 666. And we don't really know what that means yet. And we really can't know. There's tons and tons of theories out there of what that means, but we really can't know until the Antichrist takes over and we know who he is, and then we can see what that means. But we don't know what it means right now. So who is the Antichrist? Since the prophecies concerning the end time are all coming to pass now, it's certain that the Antichrist and false prophet are alive on this earth at this very moment. And both of them are undoubtedly in power right now, or very near the reins of power. And we already know the names of these men, but just don't know for sure who they are. Now, we know that based on biblical prophecy and everything about the Catholic Church, that it appears the Catholic Church is the great whore, and that the Pope is going to be the false prophet. But who is the Antichrist going to be? Well, there's one distinct possibility, and it's the Jordanian king, Abdullah II. And there are several reasons for thinking that this could be the man. Now, I'm not saying he is, I'm just saying that he fits the profile. And it tells us that the Antichrist will come from a small people, and Jordan is a small kingdom, and he's also... King Abdullah is a descendant of Muhammad and would be accepted by the majority of Muslims as their Mahdi. And Jordan is also one of the countries that the Bible tells explicitly will escape out of his hand. It will escape out of the hand of the Antichrist, meaning that it will not be one of the countries that he conquers militarily. And it could easily mean that it's where he came from and it's his own land, so he doesn't need to conquer it. There will be no reason, no need for it. And it says that the little horn of Daniel 7, Daniel 7 will obtain, of Daniel, in 8 and 11, and different places talks about the Antichrist. It says that he will obtain the kingdom by flatteries and in the name of peace. And the Jordanian king, Abdullah II, is very prominent in the world today and promoting peace in the world. He's a very, very prominent person in the peace process. And of course, we know that this peace process is a lie from Islam to lull us into complacency so that they can conquer from within. That's what Islam has always done for the last 1400 years. If they can't beat you militarily, they will infiltrate your society and conquer you from within with lies and a doctrine called taqiyya that Islam actually promotes lying and says we should lie in order to assist the ascendancy of Islam. That's what that doctrine is. So he's going to come into the world and lie to the world and use peace as a weapon, is what we see that this Antichrist is going to do. So he's going to come in the name of peace and obtain the kingdom by flattery. So, like I said, it'll probably be in the aftermath of the Sixth Trumpet War, which will be World War III, and will stand up and take over the world in the name of peace. So we don't know for sure who he is at this time, but we need to remember these things, is that he will be one of many who confirms the covenant and signs the world-sanctioned peace agreement with Israel for 7 years. When that happens, he's going to be one of those people. He's going to stand up about 8 months after that and will begin putting his plans into action to take over the world. Now I'm going to go over that when I go through the Understanding Revelation video series, and like I said, there's already an article that I have on my website concerning that, and you can see what I'm talking about. That period of time, the Bible tells us 2,300 days before the very end is when this Antichrist, this man, will stand up and start gathering his power to take over the world. And he's going to team up with the false prophet around that time to work together to put all his plans into action to take over the world. And in the middle of the 7 years, he will sit in the temple of God claiming to be God. That's when we're going to know absolutely who this man is. Like I said, I'm not saying for sure it's King Abdullah. It might be. He fits the profile very well. We'll just have to wait and see. And another possibility is Erdogan, the president of Turkey, but he doesn't really fit the role, everything that the Bible says about the Antichrist as well as the Jordanian king does. But we just need to wait and see. But we know all the signs. We have everything God told us about what to expect. So those are the entities that the Bible tells us about, these main players in the end time. And we have so much information that we really can see it happening right now. We can see all this coming together. We can see this great mosaic painting that God has painted. And just when we look at all the different ways that God gave us a view into the end time and all the different pictures he painted and put them all together, it's just an amazing, awesome discovery of God's word and what's going to happen. And it's mind-blowing. Praise the Lord Jesus.